Hello, I'm Robin and welcome to the September edition of Molten Music Monthly. It's almost October. I'm sorry about the lateness of this one, but you know, there's lots to do in September. What can I say? It's pouring with rain outside, which has at least sent the builders off to get a cup of tea somewhere, so hopefully we'll have less building noise this morning. But hey, we'll see how we go. We love being in this environment. The environment is exciting. You just never know quite what's going to happen next. Do you, Mr. Cockerel? Well, no, he's not going to do anything on cue. Anyway, this month I've got a bunch of stuff to bring to you. Exciting things, lots of little synthesizers. We had KnobCon over in the States, in Chicago, which brought a lot of bits and pieces to look at. There's some new and exciting things from people that we know and people that we don't. It's an exciting time. It's about to hit festival season as well in terms of synthesizers, so lots to talk about. So first of all, the biggest news and the most exciting news that anyone could possibly imagine is that I have a new module out. But it's called the Molten BYPASS. It bypasses things. You've got to build bypasses. Bypasses are very important. Bypasses don't seem to exist in Eurorack, and that's what inspired me to produce, along with Bafako, this fantastic module. It just bypasses things, right? It could not be simpler. You've got an effect in Eurorack. Oh, it's a nice, deep, interesting delay. How can I bypass it? Oh, I can't. Oh, I can't because this is Eurorack and apparently we don't like to bypass things. I object to that and I suggest that we do. We would very much like to. And then rather having to set up some kind of strange modulation matrix of automation to control that wet-dry mix, which is never very satisfactory, you could just instead plop in the Molten BYPASS. You want effect? Press the button. Don't want effect? Press the button. You want to do that without your finger? CV the button. On and off. On and off. Effects? No effects. Effects? No effects. It's beautiful. It's just totally beautiful in its simplicity and the way that it can actually take effects in your Eurorack and make them a creative choice. Rather than having it have it all on and maybe going to turn it down and maybe going to turn it up, you can fire triggers at it to then give you a blast of these cascading delays and taps that go on, and then remove it entirely to bring focus back to what's going on in your set. It's really changed how I use effects. I would normally just put them on, turn them on, have them there all the time. That's it. Whereas with this, I'm trigger patterning in distortions and interesting things. I'm throwing in a reverb and then pulling it out again. But it has a little secret, and that's that it has a mode that allows all the trails to pass through once you've bypassed. So if you've got a delay, for instance, you hit a single note, you throw it through your effects loop that this allows you to create, and it starts to create delays and echoes. When you hit bypass in soft mode, those echoes will continue even though it's no longer being fed by your original signal. So that gives you this way of fading out effects. So you can explode everything into a reverb, hit bypass, and nothing's going to be going to it anymore, but the tail of what did go in is still coming through until it fades to nothing. That's pretty special. That's a key feature that I'm really enjoying. The other thing is that it's DC coupled, so you can use it for modulation, which means you can create a loop of modulators, if you like, that you engage or not. You can turn on or not. So in some ways that's like a glorified mute button. I suppose it is, but with an interesting way to set that up and interesting things you can do with it. And again, the soft version means that those modulators will continue regardless of what you're sending to the input. So you can have it mixed with modulators, mixed with an input of one LFO being then craftily pushed around the place by combining it with another LFO, and you can turn that on and off with the button. Gets very interesting very fast, I can assure you. So these are available now. You can get them directly from your local modular supplier or from Bafako. It's also available as a kit. The kit is kind of it's a hybrid kit. There's some through-hole stuff you get to do, but there's also surface mount stuff which is already done for you. So it would take you about an hour, I would say, hour and a half. I've done a build video. You can go and follow my adventure into building my first bypass, because you've got to build bypasses, and see whether that works for you. Yeah? So it's cute, it's 4 HP, it's I don't know, 120 euros or something, 100 for the kit maybe, something along those lines. You should have at least 4 of these in your rack. So go and check that out. That is it. That's me completely biasedly selling you this at the very front of my video. I'll now get on with talking about other people's products. Next up is our friend Ben DivKid Wilson, who has generated with Sound Machines the DivSkip. It's a fascinating 4-channel weirdo device, overly featured, packed full and dripping, almost pouring features out of itself, which takes the idea of 4 knobs which can do 2 things, and you can wang it between the 2. That makes perfect sense. What a great summary. So it's 4 channels of triggering and gate processing, essentially. And so it can do things like chance and randomness. It can do ratchets, variable gates, LFOs, logic, and other weird bits and pieces. It's a beautifully visual module, which of course is something that I like with things like my Molten motion meter, for instance. That's absolutely into that. And it gives you these 4 knobs that have a ring of LEDs around them that go positive and negative to an A and a B outcome, if you like. And it's really interesting because the visualization of the LEDs shows you exactly what's happening in terms of the time, how long it takes to get to a thing, to trigger that thing, and then back again and get into another one and triggering that. It's very, very interesting. Each of these knobs has 2 outputs, 2 possible outcomes that you can then route and twang between. And DivKid and Sound Machines have come up with just a huge range of possibilities. I mean, from simple things like Euclidean rhythms that we really like and enjoy, to Bernoulli gates, ramps and retriggering and patterns, and all sorts of stuff. DivKid has, of course, done a fantastic video going into all the depths of what this thing can do. I have a kit and I'm going to build one very soon, and then hopefully I can get to making a video on what I think it's all about and what possibilities it could generate within my system. So it is a very exciting time for new and interesting, innovative Eurorack modules. Talking of which, let me show you this from Sound Machines. This is a new bunch of modules in Sound Machines. They've sort of been showing them for a little while, but now they are finally becoming available. And what's interesting about it is this strip. Now, Sound Machines made a little strip like this called the LS1 many, many years ago. I mean, it's decades old, and I've always loved it. Always used it and adored it, and found that it just creates these situations that make a performance so much better. At a basic level, it's a strip where you can record modulation, and then off it goes, and it does that. It's a touch strip. It's a touch strip. You go up and down in it, and it creates modulation, and it can loop, and off it goes. I've got this one here, is looping as we speak. And that in itself has been a fantastic thing. But what Sound Machines have done is now incorporate it into a bunch of modules. So you have, for instance, an oscillator with a touch strip built in for its own, modulating its own parameters. They've got a formant filter with one, which is also interesting. They have another sort of wave shaping one, which is, again, fascinating. And this one particularly here is just a 4-channel version of the same thing. So it's one touch strip, but you can move between 4 different parameters and do them all differently. So it's an uber touch strip. Now, I know there have been other, flashier sort of versions of a touch strip been around, but I've never found anything quite as simple and straightforward and intuitive as the Sound Machines one. It enables me to sit down and use it as opposed to having to reach for a manual and trying to work out what the heck is going on in other complex, similarly sized touch modules. This for me is a real winner. Now, I've got all 4 of their new modules in for review and testing, and I'm going to check them out because I think there could be a lot of fun in here. I mean, particularly with quad channel modulation as well, that's going to be going all over the place. See, I'm already thinking about it because this is the first time I've got them out of the box. And I'm just going, oh, yeah, and then, oh, yeah. So, yeah, exciting things, these. I'm looking forward to giving them a really good go. Klevgrand are one of my favourite plugin developers. They seem to have this ability to produce beautiful things. Sometimes they're a bit simple, sometimes they're overcomplicated, but always the interface and the interaction with their plugins is breathtaking, I find. And this has all come together with their latest reverb. It's called Revolv. I think that's probably how they're saying it. And it's a convolution reverb that takes impulses from a wide range of fabulous places and lets you sort of dial them in on a wheel. It's got a wheel of reverb. It's like you're going to go, I'm just going to spin it around. I'm going to go there. I'm going to be in some concert hall in the middle of Prague or somewhere. I haven't actually looked into the details of where all these impulses are taken from, but let's just make those kinds of assumptions, because on this wheel you have these pictures of these places, of these environments, of these destinations, if you like, all from which the reverb impulse is being pulled. And that's interesting. You could travel around the world with this thing, pulling impulses from these different stages, these different environments, these different opportunities. And it's not the sort of reverb, at least, I mean, I've played with it for like 5 minutes, and what I did not find was what you normally find in reverbs, which is like this massive wash of stuff, which we love. I love that. I loved it disappearing up the orifice of some awesome reverb. It's just a fantastic way to spend some time. This doesn't seem to be that. It may have that. It's not what I found on my first sort of look. It's much more subtle. It really looks to place your instrument or your vocal or your whatever it is you're doing in that space in a realistic, fathomable way, if that makes sense. So it's not a crazy reverb. It's a situational reverb, which can genuinely offer a space and a sound around the work that you're doing. And it's tied up in this interface, which is just sublime, just totally amazing. Simple and gorgeous and innovative and different. They just think differently. And we need that. We often need that side slap of just going, oh, well, this is different. It's going to take me to a slightly different place, and it's going to make my brain start to work and different parts start to fire. Creativity floods forward. And you get, a hit record, I suppose. I mean, I guess that's how it works, isn't it? Isn't it? Anyway, I just thought the whole thing was a little bit breathtaking. Talking of breathtaking, I don't know, Softube Model 77. Softube are an interesting company in that they never tell you what it is they're doing, but it's always kind of obvious. But they do some of the most amazing modelling of analog gear ever. They do amazing stuff. I mean, from their modular system, which is brilliant, and that does take brand name stuff and create models of it within a Eurorack environment in software. Brilliant. They've taken other models of other extraordinary synthesizers over the years and created these instruments that just sound phenomenal. I think they have an attention to detail, and they have perhaps a way of curating the sounds just to show off the absolute best of what they do. And that's combined with an interface. I mean, they have an art department that just does a fantastic job on the interface as well. And that does, whether we like it or not, whether we are just into sounds, just give me the sounds, we respond to a beautiful interface. At least I do. Because I have a soul. Do you have a soul? I am sorry. I'm feeling a bit sort of weird this morning. That things are just flowing, man, and we're going to go with it, right? So what is this Model 77? Oh, who cares? Nobody cares anymore. It's just a really fantastic sounding synth. No, I do care. It's all those 1977 Yamaha synthesizers. The CS, the CS80, the CS60, the CS50. They were all kind of, well, more than cousins, more like siblings, really. The CS80 being the big one, the enormous one that we all enjoy, the one that we know. But the CS60 was a slightly calmer version, the CS50 was the easy version, I think. Let's say that it was, shall we? Anyway, so the Model 77 takes all of these synthesizers and pulls it together in a relatively simplified interface. But it pulls in all of the presets and all of the sounds from those three synthesizers, which had their own thing going on. And the result is this beautifully rendered and sublime sounding classic old synthesizer that within it you can find those Blade Runner sounds. You can find that Vangelis history. You can find and pinpoint those fantastic bits in amongst kind of all the weird, crappy, clanky sounds they also made. I mean, this is something about the CS80 is it has a lot of organ in it, a lot of string machine in it, a lot of those sorts of old ideas. It wasn't that pure beautiful analog sound that we expect. It is there, and you can find it, but that's not what it's all about. It has a lot of other strange stuff going on. It has the ability to create extraordinary sounds. It has this modulation system and these paddles which were about the way you express sounds into each other. Rather than dialing and forgetting, you were sort of pushing and leaning against it. So it has a lot of weirdness to it, which I think is largely unappreciated. But I think in the Softube Model 77 you can probably discover those things. The other thing they do is they break it apart into modules so you can run it within Softube Modular, which is a superb idea. They also break out bits of distortion and filtering and amplifying, and they stick that into their Amp Room guitar plugin. So you get a lot of stuff with their software, and I think this is a superb example of what software can do. Here's another plugin. I don't know, I don't talk about plugins for weeks, then you get 3 at once. How about that? So this is from GoodHertz, which is a great name. I'm already feeling the love for that idea, and I have no idea who they are or what they're doing. But GoodHertz, yeah, that's nice. I like that. This is called a DC19, which I think is an aircraft, isn't it? I seem to remember there might be. I don't know what that has to do anything, but this is a delay plugin. What's interesting about that? Well, we have a lot of delay plugins, but what they are pushing or leaning into is the idea that this is very controllable, it's very automatable, it's inviting you to engage with parameters, to drag them around, to map in hardware controls, and to really start to play the delay like an instrument. That's the idea. The interface for this is beautifully, wonderfully adorable. It has sort of elements of a really great colour palette going into it. It's got this great visual map of where your taps are going and your delays and your echoes, and it's lovingly put together, so it seems, to encourage you to play and get exciting sounds out of what is essentially a digital delay. It's very, very cool, I think, and I think the interface, if nothing else, it just invokes these ideas of participation and interaction, and that's a wonderful thing. We want that. Again, it's like coming back to my bypass thing. Where did I put it? Molten BYPASS. Is that you want to be able to interact with effects more. I think that's good, using it as part of your creative process rather than just having it something that you turn on and let squiggle about on your sounds. Right, back into hardware then. GS Music, the Bree 6. This was at NobCon, and is kind of, I think, is best described as a smaller, more under control version of their E7 synthesizer. So E7 is a 7-voice analog synthesizer with dual oscillators per voice, that kind of thing. Big chunky desktop unit. This is built as a little keyboard synth, single oscillator, 6 voices, so it's still polyphonic, all analog throughout, and just gives you a right royally analog subtractive synthesizer time. So you've got your one oscillator, you've got a 4-pole filter, you've got 2 envelopes, you've got 1 LFO, all the usual stuff. It's got a delay effect, a chorus effect. It has this interesting stereoization option over the voices, so you can put different voices across the stereo field, which is quite interesting as you're playing. It has an arpeggiator and a sequencer built in with some nice ideas, some nice bits and pieces going on. So it's just a good, solid analog synth. It's a good size, looks nice. I think you've got a lot going for this. It costs about $1,300, I think. It should be available at the end of November. It came across to me as a good, solid, familiar, know what we're doing with it, analog poly. And that's pretty cool. Now, the Roland AIRA series of little boxes has been pretty genius, I think. Now, there's lots of things we can say about Roland. I'm always having this conversation because, recently my kids have got interested in some of my gear and they've been playing with, I've got a Behringer RD8 and a TD6, which is essentially an 808 and a 303. And seeing them engage with these instruments has been fascinating. And it makes me pine once again for why is it that Roland have never come back to do these things again. I'm thankful that Behringer have. I think that's a great thing, a great contribution of resurrecting these classic old synth boxes. But I would always absolutely love Roland to do it. However, they've sort of flirted with it over the years in software versions in boxes, the boutique range, and of course all their online plugins and virtual versions of these things. Those are all fine, and that is what Roland is about. They're about the digital future. They are about modeling technology, Zen technology, Zen Core and stuff, and pushing that into the future. They're not interested in looking back, and that's fair enough. That's their prerogative. They can do what the heck they like. They are Roland after all. Why was I saying all this? Oh yeah, so these little boxes that they did, there's the S1, which is just beautiful, and it's kind of like an SH101 to some small degree, but in a little box, software driven of course, but it sounds great. They did a T8, a little drum machine, brilliant. They did the chord thing, which is a bit like a Juno, brilliant. They're just nice, good, cheap boxes that are rechargeable. They have some nice features, a good interface, great sounds. Nothing wrong with that at all. The next one is the P6, and that's what we have now. So this is a little sampler. Again, fantastic format, 6 pads, that's enough. 6 samples, built-in microphone, just sample directly into it and you're away. Has a keyboard / sort of sequencer with it, so you can create loops and play the sounds if that's what you want, or you can just trigger them off the pads, pitch it up and down, set loop points. Simple, basic sampling, the sort of thing that's gotten lost. Software sampling, I think, has always just been too far up itself to really work itself out. I've got to build a Native Instruments contact instrument in order just to play a sound. It gets too complicated. And so in something like this, where you can just record straight in and play it, is brilliant. I think that's excellent. It's a great addition to their little range of little boxes. It's all digital. It's all fine. Comes with a bunch of effects, real-time stuff going on. What a load of fun is that? So I think if they keep this going, you're going to have your drum machine. You've got your vocal transformer. You've got some chords. You've got bassline sort of lead synth. And now you've got samples. It's creating a little ecosystem. It's very Volca-like, I suppose, but it's just interesting the choices they are making, and there's a definite push towards a coherence around what they're doing, whereas the Volcas never seemed to have that. It seemed to be very slapdash. Oh, let's do this, which is great. I mean, it's exciting stuff, but they didn't seem to be that much of an overall plan. It was just the spilling out of ideas, whereas this seems to be quite deliberate, and that's interesting. The other thing they've released is the Juno-D, with cries of crushing disappointment when they use that hallowed term Juno, which for many of us means the Juno 106 or Juno 60, which means an analog polysynth with a beautiful interface which is easy to use and sounds phenomenal. That is not what they've done. No, they've used the Juno again in unholy ways to describe what is essentially a preset instrument, an instrument full of sounds, which is brilliant. Now, don't get me wrong, it's totally brilliant. It does exactly what it is that they want it to do, which is provide live performance players with a never-ending selection of sounds that they can just select easily, quickly in a gig, go to, there's the sound that you need, off you go. It comes with thousands of sounds. It's all Zen Core technology, so you can download more sounds, put into it. It comes with a stack of library of other sounds and samples. It has everything. It's like a Kronos, but in a smaller, cheaper, more affordable, potentially battery-powered form. So it's great. It's great. But it ain't no Juno, is it? Oh, are we going to have to get over it? We're just going to have to get over it. It doesn't matter. We've been doing this for decades, trying to get Roland to bend to our will. And they won't. They won't. They know what they're doing, and they want to do that. And we just have to let them get on with doing what it is that they want to do. And for many, many people, for the mass market, something like the Juno-D, it's fantastic. Like the Juno-DS before it. I mean, what I think the D has is a sequencer, an 8-track sequencer inside, which kind of makes it sound to me a bit like a Roland D20, which I sort of had. My girlfriend owned, but I used a lot. She would use it at gigs because she would play in bands and stuff, but I would use it for writing stuff, and I got songs that I've written on a Roland D20 using that 8-track sequencer that was inside. Pre-computer and all that. And this follows that same sort of idea, I think. So it gives you a keyboard that you can realistically write songs on and then use it to perform with. With all the sounds all in the box, all ready to go. So yeah, great. A few real-time controls, yeah, whatever. A few pads, yeah, great. But ain't a Juno. Yeah. Well, I guess some people don't like the trouble and fuss that the rest of us do, and we're just going to have to get over it. Talking of not getting over it, Michigan Synthworks have come out with another crack at kind of the SH101/MC202 vibe. So this was at KnobCon. They released the what was it called? The snappily named CMU810, I think last year, and it was a slab of synthesizer with a bunch of sliders on it. Not that many sliders, mostly sliders, some sliders, but it gave this really great sound, this really great SH101 type sound is what they were aiming for, and it was good. This year they've kind of pushed much more into the interface, giving you a whole panel of sliders. But where the 810 had a single oscillator pushing into it, this, the 830, has three oscillators and a shed load more modulation in all sorts of directions, including a digital modulator which can bring in chaos and other bits and pieces. So they've kind of pushed out this 101 idea into a bigger 3 oscillator, more modulatable, more creative, more inventive synthesizer, while giving you tons and tons of hands-on control. And it sounds fantastic. I don't like the colour myself. Their colour scheme of this kind of slightly off-white, medical white kind of thing makes it look like something you'd find in a trauma clinic. But hey, different tastes and all that. I just prefer something a bit more, I don't know, make it red, make it black, make it silver, make it stripy, make it slightly sickly off-white. I don't know, that's not for me. Here's a weird droney thing from Phonicbloom. Good name there. It's called the Siluria, I think. And this is a peculiar droning synthesizer and effects processor with an interesting touchy sort of interface, a nicely designed, quirky kind of front end. It's got these knobs that evidently do stuff. There's not a whole lot of information out there about it at the moment, but knobs that do stuff, and then keys that do stuff. That transform or play different pitches. Seems to be a droning kind of experience where you're setting different oscillators to different pitches and then playing with those and doing strange effects with them, because it is also this effects processor, which I guess means it probably has an external input with which you can manipulate things through it. There's far too much guesswork going on with this particular product, I have to say, but it does have wavetables, super saws, super squares, Carpler Strong and other bits and pieces in it, so an interesting selection of sounds. It is polyphonic, it is digital, so it's probably, I was tempted to say, it's another taking the mutable instruments Platts again and taking those algorithms, but I don't know that it tends to be that. There is a danger that everybody is using those same algorithms and it actually becomes a little bit dull. I've never been a big fan of the Platts, actually. I thought there's far more interesting sounds to be had making them yourself, personally. So whenever we get another synth with another bunch of Platts in it, it's like, great. I've got at least 4 or 5 things that seem to have that in it somewhere. So this seems to be different, and I hope it is. But hopefully more information will become available. But I just thought it was a really interesting and fascinating thing to see and to show, and the sounds coming out of it are fun, soundscapey, cinematic, interesting, manipulable, those sorts of things. Syntesla. I'm pretty sure I've come across this before. The whole thing seems a little bit improbable, a little bit rendered, images wise, and I'm still trying to decide whether I fully believe it actually exists. But in the past, I believe Syntesla have done kind of steampunky type synthesizers. So big wooden cabinets with these amazing looking bits of synthesis technology stuck into them with big dials and VU meters and almost like hand cranks and big slappy buttons. Something that's fallen out of a Soviet spaceship or was made by Aldous Huxley many years ago, or came out of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. That kind of thing. So what they appear to be doing is releasing a whole bunch of Eurorack modules in about 2 months' time. They've got a countdown on their website, which is quite exciting. We like to be led towards something. And I don't know whether it's going to end up being, hey, we've created a plugin, or whether it's going to be, hey, look at these extraordinary modules. Because the images I have seen, as I say, mostly of them seem to be rendered. They look amazing. They look totally drop dead gorgeous. And this is all about VU meters, big knobs. I mean, I don't know how far you can go with big knobs in your rack, you know. It becomes, there's like a law of diminishing returns. Ultimately, you've only got a certain amount of space. But anyway, so big things to turn, impressive looking stuff, color. Yeah, I think they also did those strip lights that you can get that go like 1U strip lights. Didn't Syntesla do those? That sort of turn your Eurorack into a bit of a disco. Don't know, can't remember exactly. But anyway, I am very taken with the look of these. This new set of modules, and I really do hope that it's something that will materialize and will be as interesting and fabulous and sonically interesting as it may appear. But I'm going to keep my eye on this one, and hopefully in so 2 months or so maybe it'll get into November's Molten Monthly, maybe not. We'll have to see, but one to keep an eye on. Native Instruments have released Komplete 15. Yay! It used to be the most exciting thing ever. Well, no, when they released the new Komplete, it was always both exciting and frustrating. It was exciting because, wow, look at all this stuff. But the other thing was that you could upgrade from something quite old, which was nice. But it made you think that if you kept up to date with Native Instruments gear, you were always being penalised when a new version of Komplete came around, because your upgrade price was the same as someone who'd bought, like, I don't know, Contact 5 20 years ago, and they were going to get the upgrade for the same price as you, which is great for them. It just didn't feel like it rewarded those people who like to upgrade and keep up to date on their software. Anyway, put that to one side. Komplete 15 is, of course, a gazillion more sounds. I think the collector's edition, which is the biggest version, now comes with 1.1 terabytes of sample library. That's amazing. That's extraordinary. How on earth are you ever going to comb your way through all of that? I mean, it's undoubtedly, I think, the biggest, most extraordinary collection of software instruments and effects out there. You know, it's just extraordinary. I mean, the big thing that comes with it is Contact 8. So this is their sampling platform, which has outlasted everybody else's sampling platform, and provides the place where instrument creators can put their stuff solidly. It works, it gives you an interface and a way of working that's kind of fairly homogeneous throughout the whole range, so you always know what's going on. Same sort of thing, I suppose, in time and time, but I believe with Contact 8 they're introducing some new levels of modulation, some new opportunities to do something different, which is good, because on the one hand, having the same sort of interface for all of these sound libraries has been useful. It does get a little bit boring because it's kind of the same, you know, it feels like you've often got the same interface time and time again. And so when a manufacturer says, I've got this new sampled instrument and look at all these wonderful things that you can do with it, it's like, yeah, but we can do that with everything because they're all kind of working in the same Contact interface. So what I hope in Contact 8 is that they've brought a few new buttons and whizzes and bits and pieces to enable sample instrument manufacturers to produce something a little bit more unique and nuanced to what they're doing. But I mean, you can't really throw any criticism at what they've achieved, which is to provide us with these extraordinary soundscapes and possibilities and a wealth of sonic textures. Just amazing. It also comes with Guitar Rig Pro 7, which is like guitar amps and stuff. I lost all sense of what guitar plugins are about, I think, a few years ago. It's the same with Amplitude, and it's the same with Guitar Rig. They're just so phenomenal now that I've no idea what it is. You know, I just want an amp with a bit of drive, really. And, you know, a delay pedal and a chorus maybe. That's cool, man. But trying to find that within these bits of software, I find really difficult. Can I not just select an amp and play with that? No, I have to select a preset which loads up 14 different other things that are all interwoven and give me this crazy sound going on, or this particular sound, so I sound like Dave Grohl, or I sound like, you know, Rage Against the Machine, or I sound like I don't know, some other guitarists who I can never remember the names of. You know, I don't necessarily know that I want that for me, but other people evidently do, because that seems to be what's popular. But hey, simplicity, that's not Native Instruments' game necessarily. So, Komplete 15. It's huge. It's about $1,600 by itself. With an upgrade, it's much, much less than that. If you need every instrument in the world, then this should be something worth getting, I think. And it looks like, because it's Contact 8 is bringing something new, there's also a new version of Massive, which is great. So there's a lot of actual changes and new stuff into this version. Sometimes the upgrades are a little bit on the light side, and you wonder whether that's really worth it for another $30 another $30 voucher that you get in the box. I don't know. The voucher's still there, so you can still pick up one sound thing of your choice for free, even though you have all of them already. Anyway, you know me talking around in circles. So yeah, cool. Yeah, that's great. Nothing to touch it really. It's a fantastic selection of stuff. This one came in response to my suggestion last month that if you have a new thing coming out, you should send me details, and I'll probably mention it. So this is one of those, and it came from the Oscillator company. Again, another good name. There's some good names around this month, I think. And this is called the Extend-o-Matic. It's not quite such a good name, but hey, I'm going to go with it. Now, the Extend-o-Matic is about to become on Kickstarter, and essentially what it is that it's a synthesizer and electric piano in one unit that's focus is really heavily on the generation and manipulation of chords. So you should probably focus more on the chordal part of it rather than the sound generation capabilities. I mean, in terms of sound, it has, you know, a software engine inside which can run a subtractive synthesizer, so you've got synthesizer sounds in there, but they're also planning on having a really good electric piano inside. In the demo, they've been using a software electric piano because they haven't quite decided yet exactly what the sound engine is going to be, which feels like that should be vital. They need to get around to sorting that out, I think. But sound aside, the idea it has an interface for selecting and changing and dealing with chordal structures. So I imagine the guy behind it is very much into his jazz and wants to be able to provide simple ways for people to access those kind of chord structures, chord arrangements, chord progressions from a decent keyboard that has the sounds to also back that up. And it's interesting. It's looking good. The interface doesn't fill me with joy particularly. It's very sort of button based. It has all of the stuff laid out on the front panel, which is quite nice, by which I mean the instructions on how to use all the different menus and different bits and pieces. There's all sort of written out for you. You know, it looks a bit like an 80s synth, like oh, you know what I mean, with all the writing on the front. Looks a bit like one of those. I guess my only question is that I'm not entirely sure that it needs to worry about the sound engines. I think if it was a MIDI controller that had all this phenomenal chordal stuff in it, I think it would really hit perhaps better, be more understandable to the people who might be interested in that sort of thing, because they might already have lots and lots of sounds and sound sources and other things. Because I think including the sound sources pushes the price up beyond perhaps where their market might be, because it's going to be about $1,000 on Kickstarter. But that's, as I say, as a synth and a electric piano with all of this chord stuff. So I don't know. I'm putting it forward out to you to go and check that out. It's called the Extend-o-Matic. There'll be a link in the description somewhere, I imagine, to see what you feel about that. I think there's a lot of interesting stuff going on in the way that it's been put together in terms of helping people explore chordal structures. I think that's good. I think perhaps they need to think or rethink the idea of the sound engine, or perhaps release a couple of different versions. Release a version that doesn't have any of that in and just focuses on being a keyboard MIDI controller with all of those interesting skills mixed in. We have another synthesizer. This is from Suonobuono, possibly, called the Polyvera. I mean, Vera to me is a name for an old lady, which is cool. So it's multiple old ladies is what this is. And this is a hybrid wavetable and sampler based synthesizer. It has 6 voices, an analog filter, giving you that hybrid sound, digital effects, an ARP, a sequencer, 3 LFOs, 3 envelopes. It also supports MPE and is binaural. So it has a lot of interesting sound texture possibilities, a lot of modulation, and you're starting off with wavetables or samples. Apparently the idea with the sampling side is that they're aiming at a sort of vintage 80s vibe. So it's not going to be all of the cleanliness of massive multi-sampled instruments. They're looking for a more of an instant, intuitive, kind of lo-fi and crunchy, down and dirty sort of sampling vibe, which could be interesting. It's got a really nice front panel, lots of interesting graphics on it, and a shed load of knobs, which makes it immediately quite fascinating and tantalizing. There's not a massive amount of information out there, that's still sort of coming along, but it is an interesting way of putting something together. So there are two oscillators. You can have them as either samples or wavetables. So you can have this wavetable sound going on, and you can have a sample running alongside with that before then tripping into the analog filter and the modulation and the effects and other bits and pieces like that. So it's definitely going to give you a slightly different vibe, a different way of creating sounds, different textures that you perhaps haven't heard combined together before. Obviously it could be two wavetables, two separate wavetables, the same wavetable as two oscillators, so you can do your tuning and all those sorts of bits and pieces. So lots of possibilities with very little actual detail at the moment. The Wirehead Instruments Basilisk. This looks quite fun. There's a box, but it's scattered with these colours and squares, which then sort of points towards this matrix that it's got at the top left of lights. It looks like the matrix mixer from AIRA Synth, that kind of thing. All these things light up. However, I think the display is actually a display as opposed to a way of making connections. And different rows of it respond to different things. So some things are showing you parameter values, some things are showing you sequencer steps. It's got a 16-step sequencer inside. Other things are showing you modulation and bits and pieces. So it's a very clever and very visual way of getting information across to you. You then got a bunch of knobs that you play with the sound. The oscillators are digital, but they are sawtooth and square with pulse width modulation and all that sort of goody stuff. So it's aimed at very much producing an analog sound. And then all of that gets squirted through an MS-20 style filter. We tend to like an MS-20 style filter. It has a lot of screaming going on to it. So in the demos and stuff like that, it has a very aggressive, driven sound, which is quite delightful. The sequencer, as I say, is 16 steps, but it's also algorithmic and generative. So you can sort of set conditions and push it to start doing its own thing. The sequencer also has parameter locks, automation, so lanes of knob recording, I suppose, that as you change things per step, that can all be built in, giving you very lively, dynamic sequences. Ultimately, it sounds like a lot of fun in a little box. Looks like it's also available as a kit, which could be fun. I wouldn't mind building one of those. If somebody would like to see me build one of those, I might get around to building one of those. That might be fun, I think. But I think, if nothing else, the Basilisk has been presented brilliantly on the website and in the videos. That's the kind of thing that you need. You need exciting stuff going on to capture people's attention, and I think they've done that really well. It may not be, perhaps, the most innovative or new, exciting thing in the world, but in a package with analog-style sounds, a real analog filter, really messing things about, overdrive, generative sequencing, I think you get a lot. You get a lot of fun and play in that one package, and that is definitely worth looking at. The Biopower Audio High 5 just popped up before I made this video, which I thought, that's quite nice. That is. What is it? Well, there's a couple of little controllers, 5-channel controllers as far as I can work out, for your Eurorack. Now these are external little boxes you can hold in your hand. One of them has a joystick on, a couple of buttons, the other one has faders, buttons on it, and you can squirt all of this stuff into your Eurorack. It does it via a Eurorack module, the Hi-5 module, which you connect to via an Ethernet cable. Which is a slightly odd choice, but hey, let's go with it. It does potentially mean you could have a little network of boxes all going into the one device, although I think you're just going to run out of channels really quick because you're going to be wanting to do more than one thing at once. Perhaps. Anyway, by the by, so you connect them via Ethernet to that, which gives you this walk around handheld device with which to modulate your Eurorack, so you don't have to be all in the machine the whole time. The module just has 5 channels with attenuators, converters, I imagine, and a single output. So whatever it is you do here is going to come out there as CV into your stuff. So you're not having to deal with MIDI to CV conversion or anything like that. Well, I mean, that might be happening behind the scenes, who knows? But the presentation of it into our reality is that I've got a thing here, I move, and CV is generated in my Eurorack. That's quite nice. I mean, one of the things I like about the play fader, I've played with the play fader quite a bit. This thing here is that it's external from my Eurorack, because while I love sequencers and stuff that's in here, sometimes being able to step back and do a little thing on a thing that's in your hand is nice. It gives you space to breathe, you know, because Eurorack is not a perfect format. The fiddliness and the finickiness of it sometimes is you know, can sometimes do your head in, and being able to step back a little bit and control it from afar, even if it's just a yard, is good. It's good for you, I think. And these controllers are a similar way to that, but they're generating modulation purely as opposed to anything else. I quite like the 5 faders, because what I immediately think of is the Muton. I've got the Muton by a company I can't remember, which is an 8-channel mute module, which also has VCAs built in, but without any control, just a patch socket. And something like that, I've always thought, you know, if I could just get something which can control those externally, I can have a little mixer, rather than wasting HP in my system with a mixer, because mixers tend to eat up a lot of that while being awesome, I'm sure. If I could port that externally just to have a little mixer here, I think that would be a useful external object to have. And so Hi-Five looks like it could do that sort of thing, and that is very interesting. The joysticks are fun. You have to, I don't know how much fun, I don't know how much use they get down the line. You just kind of think, well, they kind of do this one thing, or, you know, how creative can I get with a joystick? And that is a whole other question. Sometimes it feels like it's a one-trick pony, you know, but that's purely down to the skills of the person who is using it, obviously. So that's something I would quite like to look at. So yeah, the Hi-Five, I think it's an interesting idea. It looks nicely implemented. Quite like to have a play with that, I think. Could be good. Keep your eyes open on that. Biopower audio. And finally, we heard the news this week that Future Music has stopped doing print magazines. Future Music's been around for like decades. 37 years, 32 years, there you go. A long time they've been printing that magazine, talking about future music technology and that kind of thing. This is Future Publishing based in the UK, not Future Music over in the States. I've worked with Future Music over the years many times, and I'll give a shout out to Andy Jones, Roland McDonald, Ben Rogerson, you know, all the people over there at Future Music. I hope you're doing all right. I hope this is ultimately going to be folded into Music Radar, which is their massive online music technology website, which I believe is sucking them all in to carry on writing for that platform. But I would say that I much prefer print media. I know I'm an old geezer, and yeah, that's what you expect, you know, from old duffers like myself. Because the reality is that while websites are very convenient in your hand, the reading experience of a website generally is pretty poor. Well, not every website. Some websites are awesome, but other websites have a lot of advertising stuff they've got to try to squeeze in there, and it can get heck of annoying. So when you have something in your hand, when you have a magazine that you can leaf through, that you can go forwards and back elegantly without having to click on something, without having to deal with another pop-up, you're just going, oh look, there is an advert, but I'm going to choose to go past it. Or I'm going to go, well, that's an interesting product, I'm going to look at that. How about that? That's how advertising in magazines works. It's just brilliant. But look, here's another article. I'm going to spend time reading that. I'm going to take it with me to the bathroom, and then I'm going to come back and read it in bed with the torch under my covers. All sorts of reasons. It's going to lay around looking awesome for a bit, and I'm going to pick it up again later on. The experience of reading a physical magazine is incomparable to flicking through a website that's trying to grab your attention, because you've invested in this physical object and you're going to spend time with it. You've not invested in any website, it's just trying to annoy you. So you're trying to get past it, unless you're particularly trying to find a specific piece of information. So I think it's very sad that Future Music magazine is going to be no longer gracing the shelves of W.H. Smith's and other places like that. I think we're all the poorer for it, and that's a shame. I mean, I write for Sound on Sound magazine, which is print, and I work with electronic sound, with synths and things like that, and they're a real magazine. And I know that it's really difficult. It's really hard to persuade people into subscribing and to taking on the commitment of supporting something like a real magazine. But I think it's absolutely worth it. If you can, you should do it. You should subscribe to every magazine in this industry if you're able to, because it's an amazing resource. It supports a whole industry of writers and contributors, and it highlights people in the business, it highlights processes, it gives us workshops and stuff, it tells us deeply about products. And one of the great things about magazines on the whole is that it's the magazine that pays a writer for a review. It's not the manufacturer that pays the writer for the review, like we perhaps have a little bit more difficulty with in places like YouTube and online stuff. So you have this level of authenticity and authority that comes through a proper print magazine, and the way that reviewers and writers are invited to contribute. There's separation between the advertising departments and the writers, and that I think is vital. And you don't get that. You don't get that transparency. You don't get that level of difference with online stuff, I don't think. So support your magazines. If you're in an industry, support the print magazines. It's really important. Go and do that. Go and get a subscription. Go and do that now. As soon as I finish, I'll be finished in a minute. You can go and do that. Go and sign up. Okay, there we go. That's enough. I think that's enough. I've probably missed tons of stuff out. Probably. Things I've even got on my hands that I should be doing, I've probably missed out. For instance, I've got a bunch of Erica Synth stuff to review at the moment. I've got the Formant DQ thing. I've got some other hex inverter thing they did. Can't remember. Was it a rim shot? Don't remember. I've got a new one of those EDU MK educational kits to build, which I think is a BBD delay. So lots of interesting stuff from Erica Synths coming along for reviews and stuff. As I say, I've got the Sound Machine stuff. I'm also working on the Cycle Instruments Tetrachords, which is here, and the Game Changer Audio Plasma Voice. Those are going to be hopefully my next videos over this next month. Those are the ones I'm going to be working on. Maybe a bit more, maybe a bit of the Nobular Echo Cinematic, because that's been fun. Oh, I've got the DivKid Skip, of course. I've got all sorts of filters that have turned up. So yeah, I've got a lot of interesting things that I could be doing this month, and I'll have a stab at some of them as best I can. All right. Other things coming up, of course, it's Synthfest at the weekend up in Sheffield, which has been brilliant. I've been going there since 2016, and sadly, I cannot make it. I can't go this year. I have another commitment. I have a family event that I have to go to that is ultimately more important than synthesizers. What can I say? So sadly, I'm going to miss it. So do go along. The Octagon in Sheffield this weekend, Saturday, I believe. Go and check it out. It's a fantastic opportunity to play on some synthesizers and to fiddle with stuff and to meet people who are very much into this industry and making it successful. So go along. There's talks, there's demonstrations, there's things you can get involved in. Go and have a fantastic time. And then the following weekend, I think, is Bristronica over in Bristol. Similar idea, but I mean, it's interesting that the two things are very different. Synthfest has a slightly more mature, sensible, considered feel about it. It's stroking your chins, looking at synthesizers, going, that's very nice. Bristronica is much more kind of wow, filters, down. It's a bit youthier. It's a bit more. It still has us old farts hanging around, but there's a bit more of a younger, more vibrant energy to it, which is sometimes, it's superficial compared to the long thoughts that we put into Synthfest. Over in Bristronica, it's all, it's just crazy town. But they're doing 2 days. They've gone to 2 days, Saturday and Sunday. So a lot of time to look at stuff. Some fabulous DIY workshops. Some great live performance. Some talks. DivKid's got his own tent there talking to people about stuff. There's discussions on all sorts of things going on. And some fantastic performances. Particularly by, I should say, Lula York and Nick Coltvoid, who have both played Synth East. And in fact, one of them, Lulu York, is coming back to Synth East this February to play in the support slot of the Saturday night, which is awesome. We're so pleased to have Lulu back. That's just going to be fantastic. So let me neatly pivot to Synth East. What is Synth East? Synth East is the only show based in Norwich in East Anglia all about synthesizers. It's a festival weekend of synthesizer stuff. We have a Friday night, we have an all-day Saturday, and we have a sort of a Sunday afternoon thing going on. The Friday night, I can probably announce, because we're going to be announcing it, releasing tickets the end of October. We're going to let Synthfest and Brystronica pass, and then we're going to start selling tickets for Synth East. But just to give you a heads up, we have, I believe, I mean, hopefully I'm not speaking out of turn. We have John Fox from Ultravox with us on Friday night, being interviewed by the awesome Adam Buxton. We also have a movie that night, which is going to be awesome, whichever way it is. They've got two possibilities that we're still just trying to work out the details on, but it's going to be a fantastic thing. So Friday night we're going to have a film which is going to be absolutely about music, electronic music and synthesis and stuff, followed by this interview with John Fox and awesome things happening in the bar afterwards, like sort of getting drunk. Then on the Saturday we have the expo thing, which is all the manufacturers packed into the main hall at the Norwich Arts Centre. You can come and fiddle on synths and talk to them about stuff. We'll have performances throughout the day, including our now legendary all-star patch-off with myself, Gaz Williams, Steve Davis, heading up this awesome, improvised, drawn out of a hat, modular experience. Into that mix so far we have Nikki from Dots, which is very, very exciting. Very excited about that. We've got two other slots that we're still and about, trying to persuade someone into the idea of coming to play for free, at a thing for a laugh. That's the plan. Obviously they've just got to be massively famous. That's also important. So that's the All-Star Patch-Off, which we'll have more details on once I've got that together. Then in the evening we have See Feel, which is a band of really interesting and eclectic electronic music producers. Very interesting. The sort of thing you can absorb and feel completely entangled in. And before that we've got Lulu York supporting them. And before that I've got me and a special guest who I really need to go and talk to make sure that this is going to happen before I reveal what that is. But I am super, super excited about the potential of what this collaboration could mean. Because that little support slot of mine is not, the idea is not to say, hey, it's my show and so I get to play music. It's not that. It's, hey, it's my show, I get to collaborate with fantastic people and have a really good laugh on stage for half an hour while feeling absolutely terrified. That is the plan. That is always the plan. Then on the Sunday we have some DIY. This year we have Jack from Beat Boop Electronics coming down to do some loop tape DIY stuff, which is super exciting. There's only going to be a few spaces for that, sadly. So you'll want to be buying your tickets really quick once they're emerged. We do have some other DIY. We think we're still just trying to work that out because we don't have a lot of space. We're just trying to work out exactly what's going to happen with that. So that is, in a nutshell, what Synth East is going to be about. We'll firm up these details as we go forward, and as I say, the tickets will be available by the end of October, and I'll keep you updated on that. Because we have sold out each show so far, which is a really positive thing, but I wouldn't want anyone to miss out. So do keep in touch, and I will let you know what's going on. And if you're a manufacturer who wants to show at Synth East, then just give us a shout. Give me a shout and I'll stick you on the list. We can have about 25, so not huge. Obviously there's more at Brystronica and Synthfest, but it's enough, and we have a smaller space to fill, and it's really very, very cool. It's a lovely little festival. It doesn't cost you very much either. You'll be amazed at how cheap it is to come along and show your stuff. So if you're interested, manufacturers, do give us a shout so that I can make sure you are on the mailing list for when the opportunity to book yourself a table also goes live. There we go. So that's it. I think that's enough. That's enough. It's unlikely I'm going to squeeze this video out by the end of September, but I will do my best. I'm going to go and have some lunch, and then I'm going to go and get editing this down into the beautiful form that you end up seeing. So that's the plan. Hope that was useful. In the meantime, Go make some tunes.